Welcome back. My name is Jeff Mendelson, and this is the One Big Tip podcast. And today I am really pleased to have with me on the line Josh Sweeney. Josh is a seasoned entrepreneur whose relentless drive has given him the platform to build big ideas and even bigger companies. Josh's team has works with startups and emerging businesses to leverage HubSpot to increase sales and enhance marketing campaigns. And what's really cool discussion today is that we're going to talk about some tips on how to really communicate at a very high level to those clients in order to get them to close more deals. So, Josh, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so this is going to be a lot of fun. So, can you tell me a little bit about, a little bit deeper about who you are and what you're doing over there at Founder Scale?
Sure. So Josh Sweeney, as you said, married, have two boys, and spend lots of time with them and the family. And other than that, I run Founder Scale, and I'm an entrepreneur. Bought and sold a previous company, or grew and sold, a previous company before launching Founder Scale. And what we do is sales and marketing operations. So what we find is a lot of founders have challenges going from founder sales to sales and marketing machine. It's a totally different mentality. It's a totally different methodology and set of skills. So we do that using lots of different tools and technology and processes, in addition to helping them leverage HubSpot to grow that sales and marketing team.
So it's interesting that you say that when when you're a much smaller company and like the head salesperson is the founder of the company, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes those skills don't necessarily translate to building a sales and marketing machine, right? Because there's probably a lot of superhero syndrome going on where it's like, well, I got to be making sales, right? How do you help CEOs make that transition from, it's all about me to it's all about my team?
Yeah, you nailed it. In that a lot of founders start and even grow their business into a few million in revenue through referrals and networking. So they just go out, they network, they hustle, they make those deals come in. And then one day they wake up and decide, well, I don't want to be the primary salesperson. I want to be able to go on vacation and still have deals coming in, or I want to grow at a faster rate is another way that happens. And the entire skill set is completely different. Now you have to understand a marketing and sales technology stack. What works for B2B versus B2C? What are the different marketing items or sales tasks or execution items, strategy, all of that is going to work for my business? And what am I going to just spend money on that's not going to show any results? And there's lots of different options out there. So we help them by showing them the measurements and the metrics and say, okay, we know if you implement this and you send this many emails using this tool, this is how many meetings you're going to get. This is how many deals you're going to get. By the way, you have to augment it with a reason to engage. You have to give people a reason to engage with your organization, not just harass them via email for the next meeting. So there's all kinds of training and techniques and processes that goes into helping them make that transition.
All right, cool. But why HubSpot then? Why use that particular stack as opposed to, many of the others out there like Salesforce, Pipeline, things like that? Like, why did you guys adopt that particular platform?
Yeah, so I've been in the CRM industry for about probably 15 years now, and I've implemented lots of different CRMs and marketing stacks. And what we found with HubSpot was it's really just a perfect blend that grows with the business. So you can start with a free version as a small company. You can move up to a $50 a month version. You can move to an $800 a month version. So it really grows with the company and is built for those smaller organizations. And the amount of customization and other things that you do are lower barrier to entry than some of the more enterprise types of solutions. So it's just really well positioned for a growing company. And if you need heavy customizations, heavy integration, there are other more extensive options out there. But it's a good fit for most organizations that we work with.
Very interesting. One of the things that, I talk with my clients about is, the software that you mentioned is not just, go and pay the $800 a month and this is going to resolve all your issues, right? It doesn't work like that, right? You need to ingrain it into your corporate culture. You need to set up some rules, some barriers, and even, a fair amount of training in order to get people to adopt it. How have you seen the adoption of HubSpot into your client companies versus like some of the others? Like, do you find that it's easier to work with, or is there still a level of complexity which which complicates things. Like, how does that work when you're suggesting that, hey guys, you need to go with HubSpot, and here's why?
Yeah, I think when you look at the adoption, there's a lot of things that HubSpot does to help people adopt it. And most of I would say the top 5 CRM and marketing automation vendors do a lot of the same things. It's when you get into the 6 through 10 where you might not have the built-in training, you might not have robust support and other things that a vendor like HubSpot provides. So there's lots of things that they provide, and then there's other things that we add on top of it. So adoption is such a huge part of getting the value out of the system. So we actually have a product called Adopt Hub, and we will send each person in the organization a video once a week that's under 5 minutes that trains them on another feature in the product. So we build that into our engagement because we know if our clients don't get value out of it, they're not going to renew, they're not going to be able to sell more and enhance their sales and marketing. So training is really a big piece, and adoption is a big piece of what we provide.
Amazing. So let's talk a little bit about the softer skills that you need to implement and that you need to train on, right? And one of those key things is, it's part of your one big tip, which is over communication, right? And over communication for me is something that you really need to be as verbose as possible to whoever it is that you're dealing with, right? Most of us now are working within we're all remote, right?
Yeah.
And and even if you're not remote, even if you work in an office, your clients are remote. So it doesn't matter whether they're in the same city or across the country or halfway around the world. I mean, they're remote. Just deal with it, right? So what happens is, if you're not over communicating and you're not training everyone who touches this software how to communicate or how to use it to get the most effective use, you could actually be putting yourself at a disadvantage. How do you define over communication and get clients to implement that in terms of how they're working with you, how they're working with their sales team, and ultimately with their clients?
Yeah. So one of the questions I ask when we're looking at over communication is, one, are we being pleasantly persistent? So that's a saying that I heard a few months ago, and I just really gravitated towards that because we want to be very persistent in what we're doing with clients, on sales, during the sales cycle, internally between each other. And, if somebody hasn't said that's too much, then you haven't over communicated yet. And we're not trying to get to that point where we're harassing them by any means, but we do want to over communicate as much as possible. And that comes into all different areas of the business, and there's all different ways that we do that. So for example, just client updates. We have a policy where we don't want any clients to have to ask us for an update. We want to predict that they need an update, that they haven't had an update in a certain period of time. And we want to proactively let them know, hey, it's in this status. Here's what we're waiting for. This is complete. We want to over communicate. And at any point in time, they can say, hey, that's too much. Can you wrap that up in a weekly email? No problem. We can do that. But we really start off with over communicating and getting in front of them as often as possible.
So how does that effort translate into your actual workload? Is it does HubSpot or any other part of the marketing stack help you in terms of creating dashboards that you can either screenshot or just send over right away? Or is it a conscious effort on the account manager's part or on your part to actually, okay, these are the key metrics that this particular client likes, but another client may want different types of KPIs that they want reported on?
Yeah, so we're in sales and marketing operations. So if it's not a system or a process that it does as much of it for you, then it's not going to be persistent, right? It's not going to continue and make sure it goes out every week. So we actually use a number of different tools. HubSpot's one of them, where we look at our client list and we look at the last activity date and did we send the update that week? When we send the update, we have a certain format where we can pull from our project management system and from HubSpot and combine it into the weekly PDF. And then a lot of people don't like reading those, right? Those can be long updates. So in addition to that, we record a Loom video of the top 3 things that we got done that week. So if somebody really wants to get into the nitty gritty, they can read our update that's a PDF. If they just want the recap, we'll hit them with the top 3 things, the most exciting things that we help them accomplished that week. And that's going to be in a Loom video that's going to get delivered, and that's archived to HubSpot so that we can see that it was done. So we're really just looking in the system to make sure it's completed consistently and everybody's getting an update.
So with the with the types of clients that you work with, do you find that you do have to report different types of information based on the industries that they're in?
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, there's different metrics. Some people like some of the vanity metrics a little more and they want to know more about those. Some only care more about the bottom line metrics, like the leads generated or deals converted. So we'll give them those metrics. So it does vary whether it's kind of B2B or B2C or what their style is, but we have a set of metrics and details that we start with. And we've broken up that PDF update that we send on a weekly basis into those sections with those 3 tips at the very beginning.
Very cool. So when you're onboarding a new client to your system and you're setting up HubSpot and you're setting up all these connections into there, like what does that process look like to you? Like what would be a typical onboarding process, and like what kind of detail do you need before you can even get started to do that?
Yeah, so there's a whole checklist on our side that we go through. It's got to be set up in the accounting system. It's got to be set up in the project management system, in HubSpot, all of our other systems as an account so that we can track that information. And then we get into our project kickoff, which depending on what product and package they're signing up for us can vary. But we have a checklist that we go through so that we're onboarding them efficiently. So most of them start off with a discovery call to get the lay of the land, get more details than we might have had during the sales cycle. And so that's level setting with the team. Who are we going to communicate with? Who needs what updates? I think that's another thing with over communication is we don't assume that everybody needs the same updates. We may be working with a diverse team where the person who brought us in, that's the founder, wants very specific updates, but we're actually working more heavily with a marketing lead or a sales lead. Well, they want different updates. That sales leader may not want to know the metrics from the campaign the marketing person ran. So because we have a working group that is the sales and marketing group, and we're aligning that group, different people are going to want different updates. So we try and break those up in different ways. But we do that during the kickoff call and the discovery sessions. And then we put together a full 12-month plan that says, okay, this is the outline of what we want to execute for you. And we move those around as needed during the execution of that contract.
What's interesting is that you hit on something that's been almost like a recurring theme on this podcast, at least, and that's the whole thing of processes and checklists, and basically what it does is that it standardizes the level of service that you are going to give to that client, right? So you want to make sure that you're delivering the same type of service, across the board, and you're not really creating these anomalies where you have to do one custom thing for this guy and one custom thing for that guy, right? I mean, you should have a little bit of leeway that you can push that information through, but at the same time, your entire team, right, as you're working with them, needs to know what the game plan is, right? And they need all of that information, to move forward. And one of the things I find is that not everyone has that mentality, right? It's just like, oh no, right. I'm a founder. I'm just running 1,000 miles a minute, and that just goes back to superhero syndrome where, it's all in my head, man. Like I know exactly what needs to happen. And how do you get that out? Right. And sometimes that can be a real challenge depending on the attitude of the founder of the person that brought you in. How do you deal with those challenges when someone isn't as receptive to, say fulfilling the checklist that, you need in order for you to be successful, to make them successful? You know what I mean? Like, how do you make that happen?
I think a lot of times people need to know the why behind the ask. So sometimes we just ask for things and some people will provide it. And some people are like, I don't see how that fits. Right. So when we're able to tell them why we need that or why it fits in, they get on board a little more quickly. And there's certain things in sales and marketing where you can't do C until you've done A. right? You can't have a reason to engage or content to send somebody during outbound prospecting if you haven't created the content first. And, maybe that founder is like, hey, we need leads tomorrow. We want to get this going. And it's like, okay, well, there's certain things that have to happen before then, but also we don't want to waste time, right? We don't want to claim there's a bunch of things and then you spend a bunch of money and haven't seen value yet. So there is a speed to delivery. So we work with them on the why. Why are we asking for this? We also are very metrics driven in our organization. So we'll show them what we believe the impact is going to be. Here's 3 other clients, not naming the clients, but here's other similar clients that are maybe B2B like yourself. And here's the measurements and metrics that we saw and the outcomes from this. So you know what kind of action we have to take and why we're taking that action.
Amazing stuff, man. Thank you so much for sharing that. Hey, listen, can you tell everyone a little bit more about how they can find you at your scale and how they can reach out to you if they'd like to learn more?
Yeah, so the easiest thing to do is go to founderscale.com and hit the contact button, and you can just fill in whatever form or information you need. I'm happy to help in any way that I can. Ask for Josh, and it'll get routed to me. And you can also see on this window the LinkedIn, so you can go to Josh Sweeney on LinkedIn, and you'll find me.
Amazing stuff. Josh, thank you so much for coming on today. I really appreciate you like dropping those HubSpot bombs. I know that HubSpot is a very is a very vast enable system, and it's actually very affordable, especially some of the other ones which we won't go into today.
Yeah.
So so it's great. Thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.